Suburban Sentinel here with another incredibly exciting video. Keep your seatbelts on at all times. Sorry about the mower noise in the background. My neighbor sees it necessary to cut his lawn every 10.5 hours. I don't know why. It's just grass, Al. It won't hurt you. It's okay. Dumbass. Anyway, where was I? Wanted to talk a little bit today about the most interesting topic of fuel canisters, some of which appear before you on the screen. Fuel is, of course, a basic necessity for those of us living in the modern world. In the event of an SHTF or other type of emergency situation, fuel supplies will likely be a very big issue. We've been through 2 electrical outages here in the past 18 months that were prolonged more than 2 weeks. And of course the fuel supply was interrupted because electricity was unavailable at the fueling stations. As preppers, we really want to be able to store and transport fuel for our generators and other machinery, and to power our cars and trucks, especially in a bug-out situation. Today I'm going to focus on storing smaller amounts of fuel that can be easily transported. So that's why we're talking about fuel canisters. I'm a bit of a history buff, so I'd like to review the background of how these cans came about, because I find it rather interesting. The cans you see before you on the screen date back to before World War II. Not these particular cans, but the design of the cans. World War II was the first highly mechanized major conflict. Before the war, the Nazis knew that their intended blitzkrieg across Europe would require a great deal of fuel to power their tanks and trucks. So before the outbreak of the war, German engineers were tasked with designing a highly effective fuel canister to power the German army. And Wiley the cat has showed up to render some assistance with filming. Here he is. Say hi, Wy. You're a good boy. I know. So anyway, the engineers put a lot of thought into the design, and the original design looks very much like the cans you see on the screen. And even those original cans worked superbly. The cans the Allied forces used were nowhere near as effective. According to my research, the cans the American forces were using were known to be rather leaky and ineffective, and wasted a lot of fuel, and was the cause of many fires which destroyed a lot of equipment. Also, the cans the British used early in the war were commonly known as flimsies, and the troops would often take the cans they were issued and cut them up and use them as stoves rather than as fuel canisters. The German fuel cans, either found or captured by Allied forces, were highly prized by the Allied troops for their effectiveness. Eventually, samples of German cans made it back to Allied war planners. The British copied the German design exactly, and of course those cans worked superbly as well. The Americans copied many aspects of the cans and omitted others, and of course were not nearly as effective. After the war, this basic design endured and still thrives to this day. Several militaries throughout the world have abandoned this type of jerry can and gone to a plastic type can. Certainly the advantages are understandable. With a plastic can, corrosion is not an issue, and the plastic cans are much lighter. But this German design jerry can, as it was called, is still in use with NATO and many countries throughout the world. The term jerry can was coined by the British forces. The word jerry was a slang for German soldier. So they started calling the fuel cans jerry cans, and that name has stuck. The cans I have here are NATO style cans, and these happen to be what are called pre-ban jerry cans. And I'll get into that later. These jerry cans are basically banned for fuel storage right now. But in part 2 of this video, I'll tell you about how these cans are still available despite the ban, because otherwise I wouldn't be wasting your time and mine talking about these. So I'm going to stop the camera now and focus on one of the large jerry cans on the screen and review its design. On the screen here is a standard 20-liter NATO jerry can. The first point about the design is the basic shape. You'll notice that the can is essentially rectangular, and that's important because the rectangular shape allows for efficient storage and stacking of cans. If you see here, I'll just grab another one, and they can sit side by side without wasting any space in between as a circular type can would. Second noteworthy feature of the NATO style jerry can are these strengthening ribs built into both sides of the can. Those ribs increase the rigidity on the sides and makes the can easier to handle. Another noteworthy feature is the way the can is constructed. Basically, it's built in 2 halves and welded together. Let me see if I can do this. It's a little difficult with the camera, but we'll see if we can get this to focus in. You'll see the seam that goes around the entire can is a continuous weld. It's not a rolled seam kind of construction as the American cans were back in the day. This is a continuous weld, which makes for solid construction with no leaks. You'll also note that the standard jerry can has 3 handles. Now this is pretty well thought out. If you look at it, the middle handle is designed so that one person can carry the can without it tilting to one side, so it doesn't bang into your knee or your leg. The inboard handle allows a user to grab 2 jerry cans, 2 empty ones at the same time, so they can carry 2 in each hand. If you're a big monkey, you can carry 2 full ones in each hand. I used to be able to do that back when I was young and strong, but I think 2 empty ones is about as much as I would go right now. But it is a very nice feature to be able to grab 2 without a problem. And finally, having 2 handles a substantial width apart allows the can to be handed off to someone else in a bucket brigade fashion without having to use just one handle. It makes it much easier to hand the cans off. Now let's take a look at the spout. You'll notice that the spout is kind of a trapezoidal shape, and that gives you a couple of advantages. First, you can pour right from the can without using a separate spout. Having the relatively narrow trapezoidal shape allows you to pour some liquid, as opposed to a can with a rather large circular opening, which gushes fuel out if you don't use some sort of spout. Second, the trapezoidal shape allows for a cam-operated closure. So let's talk about the closure right now. You'll see this is a piece of captive hardware, so you don't have to worry about the cover separating from the can. And quite simply, you just cover the spout, and here is the can, and you just push down and it seals the can. There's a locking pin for extra security of the can. And if you look inside the top of the cam cover, you'll see there's a wide, thick gasket sealing the can. Between the friction lock of the closure and the heavy-duty gasket, the can, if it's in proper working order, is virtually leak-proof. Let's look at some internal features, which unfortunately you won't be able to really see. But if you were to take this can apart, you would see running along the top of this can is an air chamber. Now that air chamber has a couple of purposes. First, even when the can is loaded to capacity with 5.2 gallons or 20 liters of fuel, the can, if it's properly closed, will float. Second, there's an air tube running from the spout, which you can see the beginning of it right here, that leads directly into the air chamber. Allowing air directly into the can allows for smooth flow of the liquid out of the can without the gurgling that you often get out of a standard container. This, of course, provides for a more safe and efficient transfer of fuel from the can to whatever tank you happen to be filling. Another noteworthy feature is that the closure rides lower than the handles, which is great. I don't know if we'll be able to get too much of this on camera, but this allows one to stack cans one on top of another. Again, makes for very efficient storage and transport. The final feature I'll talk about is the pouring spout. If your can is open and you have one of the optional little pour spouts here, let's see if I can get this a little better angle. The pour spouts match precisely up with the trapezoidal shaped mouth, and they have a similar friction lock. So you just have to line up the spout and push down on the cam lever, and there you go. In addition, it's very easy to store this spout with the can. You'll see here this little rubber adapter. The spout just clips into the adapter here. So it's all in one nice unit. So how do these things work? To sum it up, these are terrific. They do everything that the German engineers envisioned, and it works very, very well. When I got these cans, I of course wanted to do some testing of my own. So I took, not this can, but they make a water type can, which you see over there, the blue one. And I filled that with water after inspection, and I hung it upside down for 2 weeks, and I got absolutely no leaks at all. And so that bolstered my confidence in the design. So I then took a gasoline can, I'm not sure which one, I bought a bunch of these, and I did the same thing with gasoline. And again, 2 weeks upside down, no leaks at all. It was really great. Maintenance on these cans is pretty minimal. You just want to inspect for and take care of any surface rust that accumulates. And two, occasionally you want to change that gasket that seals the mouth of the opening. The can holds 20 liters, which again, by math is correct, it's 5.2 gallons, somewhere in that neighborhood. These cans are made out of steel and they're heavy. The can without the spout is about 7 pounds empty. So with a full load of gasoline here, you're looking at about 42 pounds. As I said before, these are pre-ban cans, which of course begs the question, what's the ban? Well, the federal government, in its infinite wisdom, by regulation has outlawed these cans for fuel storage use. Do not be disheartened. These cans can still be had. In part 2 of this fuel container video, I'll pass on some hopefully useful information as to what these cans can be used for, and I'll tell you where to get them. So thanks for watching. I'll be posting part 2 of this video in a few days. This is the Suburban Sentinel. Please subscribe and be safe, everybody.